Hey everyone, it's Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's Tuesday, and we've got Mike DeFabo of The Athletic on. I want to talk with Mike about the Steelers' offensive philosophy and whether it's going to be dependent on which quarterback they choose, or if they just need to go with a philosophy and then figure out quarterback after the fact. That's up here next on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. We're joined by the man himself, Mike DeFabo, Steelers reporter for The Athletic. We're ready to get into it with him.
Chris, when you say let's get into it, you don't even know. Like, it just has a jolt that just sparks something in my system, and I'm ready to talk some Pittsburgh Steelers. It gets me hyped.
That's the whole point of it, man. It gets everybody locked in or locked on, as they should be. But let's talk about this. Now, Mike, we're going to get into quarterback grades and other things in a bit. But I want to talk about the philosophy that the Steelers tried to embrace and maybe did for a part of the season, but then it kind of waned throughout the year. And that's the idea that they came in, they wanted to be rough, tough, and they wanted to run the football. And then and they were at one point, they had, some really dominant rushing games against the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants. They even ran the ball well against the Commanders, even got good ground game and running back production against the Ravens. But then you saw it down the stretch against the Eagles. The run game disappeared. The Ravens, it really didn't kick in until it was, too late. Same thing for the Chiefs. And then the Bengals, they literally did not run the ball. They ran only 74 yards. So I look at those numbers and it makes me wonder if their plan of how they want to operate at next year is more about still developing that run game, or do they need to switch philosophies and build a system about whichever quarterback they get, be it Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, or Matt Stafford, if we want to get crazy here.
Yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation because this has been a big talking point in Pittsburgh. And I would agree that, if you've got Joe Burrow or you've got Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, yeah, it's great to spread things out and rely on your quarterback's right arm and be like, we're going to be this wide open passing type of offense. But at the same time, if you're putting a quarterback who's, kind of mediocre, average, a little bit above average, in a system like that, putting too much on his shoulders, you're not going to be successful. I strongly believe that a big reason why Justin Fields was 4-2 through his first 6 games, a big reason why he had his best passer rating, best completion percentage of his career, tons of other metrics, EPA per attempt and so forth, was because of the fact that he was in a system where they were not asking him to do too much. And I think it is fair to acknowledge that, in my eyes, one of the most disappointing things about this season is the running game did not take a huge step forward, and in many cases, it took a step back. I think that it's very fair to acknowledge that it was underwhelming, and that was supposed to be a strength of this team. It is not yet that. And I wrote multiple times about how there's a big difference between who the Steelers want to be and who they think they are and who they actually were. That said, I still am of the camp that you can win football games running the football. And here's something to think about. Okay. The Philadelphia Eagles ran the ball by far the most. They're in the Super Bowl. Number 2 was the Baltimore Ravens. And had it not been for Mark Andrews dropping the pass and fumbling the football away, they could be in the Super Bowl, or at a minimum, they would have been in the AFC Championship game. The Detroit Lions, who everyone throughout the entire season was talking about them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders, they got the best out of Jared Goff because they ran the ball the third most. Okay. Steelers came in number 4. The Packers, who have a great quarterback in Jordan Love, they were able to survive his absence and make the most when he was on the field because they ran the ball so effectively. And finally, number 5, tied with the Packers, was the Washington Commanders. And so running the football has not gone away. And I don't think that the Steelers have to do some dramatic 180 and say, we're throwing the football no matter who our quarterback is, and that's going to be our identity on offense. For me, it's about running the football better. I don't know if they need to run it more or less, but they need to run it better no matter what.
I'm right with you here, and I think this is one of the things that get lost when fans start talking about it, or other people just start talking about it when they say, "Oh, the Steelers need to move it to the modern age of the NFL." Running the ball is part of the modern age right now. Like being pass happy is great when you have an amazing quarterback and amazing wide receivers. Like honestly, the Bengals are kind of the relic right now in the NFL. The Chiefs run the ball more balance-wise. The Lions are running the ball very balancedly. I mean, you look at the way that they're playing. Even the Bills, James Cook was going on fire this year, and that was a big part of what balanced the Bills' offense. And, of course, Josh Allen ran a bunch. But it's like unless you have a superstar quarterback who can be an MVP, a triple crown wide receiver, and another superstar wide receiver, it doesn't make sense to try to do that when defenses have loaded up to try to stop the passing game. And what teams are starting to try to do is be like the Eagles, be like the Lions, try to run you over, be like the Ravens. That's what they did to the Steelers down the stretch. Was they were able to just bully the Steelers off the line of scrimmage, and it set everything else up. And that way, Lamar Jackson, he's an MVP quarterback, but he's not the simple drop back and just throw it, all the time, 40 yards downfield. He doesn't win the same way Joe Burrow does, and that's the thing the Steelers are in right now. They don't even have Lamar Jackson, but you could see them with a quarterback like Jared Goff have success if they ran the ball well. It just took time. It takes time to develop that. The Lions had been building that offensive line for years between Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, all the guys that they've been adding to that. The Ravens have been building that line for years. The Eagles have been building that line for even longer than both of them, and that's why they have the most dominant run game in the NFL on top of Saquon Barkley. And I said this when we were leading up to it. We did a show with Jenna leading up to the Eagles game. And I said, the reason the Eagles are going to win this game is because the Steelers are trying to be the Eagles. The Eagles are that team right now. They know how to do that stuff. So when people say the Steelers, they got to come into the modern era of the NFL, I think that people miss running the ball is part of this modern era right now. You just got to do it effectively, and you need players to execute at the line of scrimmage. We've heard the Steelers say that a million times, the word execute. And I think that that's where they need to get more out of their guys. Like you said, Broderick Jones had a rough year. And I wouldn't say a bad year, but he was very up and down. He did not show progress in the way that you hoped. You hope that Zach Frazier can continue to climb. You hope Mason McCormick, this can be like his year where he figures things out. Like you said, you hope Troy Faltano can be healthy. But you need that core to develop to be this kind of a team, regardless of who your quarterback is.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. And, I think it's important to look back at what the Steelers have done. The one thing I'll give them a lot of credit for is there is a clear vision. And for me, you could pick either way. You could pick a certain style or philosophy of football, but all the subsequent decisions have to line up. And I think the Steelers are doing that in the sense that they brought in a guy, Andy Weidel, to be the guy who sets the draft board as the assistant GM. He has a big role in shaping this team and deciding, which direction they're going to go in the draft. He basically built, in a lot of ways, or he was the right-hand man to Howie Roseman when they built that dominant offensive line. So that is their blueprint, okay? They've already done it once. Andy Weidel was already in the building and watched that transformation take place. He knows what a good offensive lineman looks like. And I have confidence that if the Steelers play the long game, which has kind of been their approach, like, let's be honest, drafting a ton of offensive linemen the first two drafts with Omar Khan and Andy Weidel, that's not a sexy thing to do. Right. That does not get people excited. But it's like putting that money in the 401k. You know that it's going to come back and benefit you in the long run. And that's what the Steelers kind of are counting on. And so for me, the big question is just like, how big of a step forward does this run game take in year 3 of the progression? Does Broderick become the guy does he prove he was worth a first round pick? Does Zach Frazier continue to be like not only really good, but freaking dominant and one of the best centers? Like, he'll need to take that big step. And then Troy Faltano, there's a lot riding on him because there's a lot of hope that he'll come in and automatically be better than Broderick too. So I think that all that's critical. And then also as much as we've been talking about like the quarterback, and that is a massive decision, they also are a team that wants to run the ball so much that there's a ton of question marks at the running back position. So is Jaylen Warren, after sustaining 2 injuries this season and being hamstrung by those injuries, is he ready to carry the load over a 17-game season, something he's never done? Is there the right option in the draft to help pair with Jaylen Warren? So, they gotta fix that position and address that. But still, I think in the long run, if the Steelers take a big step forward, I almost see them in the pre-Ben days when they had a really good defense. You could count on them to run the football, and they were kind of like, is Tommy Maddox, can he do it? Can he win you a playoff game? Can he take you on a run? Then they got Ben, and it was like, boom, they went to that next level. I feel like that's like, if the Steelers have one more good draft, they'll be at those right at the pre-Ben days when they were like a competitive team without a quarterback, and then the quarterback took them to the next level.
I'm right with you. That's what they're trying to set up. Again, we said you and I said at the start of this year, a lot of us who covered the team said this was not the Super Bowl year. This was not the year that they were going to go on some crazy run. This was a year to kind of make sure that you grew some things. You did, and I think that's the frustrating thing is you got to the same points you were last year as far as getting into the playoffs, losing in the first round, but you don't know if your offensive line has found the future. That's got to be a big part of this puzzle, as well as what they want to do at quarterback. The ultimate plan of when they can be a Super Bowl contender will be if they fix these other things so that when that time is to go get that quarterback, that they're ready for that. We'll talk about that next here and get to some of your mailbag questions here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Stick with us. We will be right back. But first, I remind you, this show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. What I love most, it's fast, safe, and easy withdrawals when you use Prize Picks. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can split split $1 million in promo funds of the winnings. Download the app today, use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. As always, you guys can call in for the show. During the season, we kind of shut this down because we have so many things to cover and it's tough to get questions in. But we have our call-in line. You can call at any point in time, 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute, and you'll get your chance to get a question on the show. And I wanted to get, and I knew the quarterback questions were going to be up at the top of the list. This one came from Micah all the way out in Battle Creek, Michigan. Take it away, Micah.
Hi, Chris. This is Micah from Battle Creek, Michigan. I appreciate your consideration, taking my question and having it on your show. My question to you is, how do you feel about Justin Fields compared to Russell Wilson returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I know you've spoken about it on your show before, but it seems like the overall consensus is that Fields is no good. And I happen to be one of those Fields fans that just feels like he's going to do amazing with the right offensive coordinator and the right support around him. I'm excited for him to be the franchise quarterback, but I just want your opinion on that. Or do you think the Steelers are going to look elsewhere, whether it's free agency or the draft? I appreciate your consideration, Chris. Love the show. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Micah, for calling into the Locked On Steelers call-in line. As always, that's 412-223-6644 to get your question on the show.
Mike, I'm gonna start prank calling that line.
Actually, please don't. Also, actually, the cool thing about it is that I get it filtered. So, like, there's people who try to prank call me, and Google lets me know, like, hey, that's a fake
prank.
Yeah, this is the prank. Don't even try to open it. So, I've gotten a few of those.
If you get one at like 2 a.m. that's just screaming, "Let's get into it," you'll know it's from me.
That'd be fun. But okay, Mike, I think it's interesting that Micah thinks that the media says that Justin isn't the call, because I don't know about you, but so we just did a show, Final Word, and it was kind of Sunday night on Channel 11 WPXI. It was kind of a consensus. It's kind of been the consensus. I think a lot of people are saying Justin Fields is the guy to move forward with. We understood giving Russell a chance during the year, but when you see how it all plays out, Justin Fields, younger, more athletic, gives you a chance. I think he is the guy that they should be keeping if they're keeping one.
Yeah, to me, it's like almost everyone keeps talking about Justin, and it feels like so many people are talking about him being the guy that I'm like, hold up, like they haven't yet named him the starter. They haven't yet signed him to a contract. Like there are other options. Maybe they'll go a different direction. But I agree. I think that Justin probably is the direction they're going to go, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, you have to realize that in the draft, this is a very poor class. And even the guys at the very top, Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, who likely will be off the board before the Steelers pick, there are a lot of question marks about whether those guys are going to be franchise quarterbacks. Then you've got guys like Jalen Milroe that, I'm hearing that the Steelers aren't really enthralled with him. And, the Steelers expect him to go off the board well before they would be comfortable making that kind of pick. So within the draft, there aren't a lot of great options. Then you look at the veteran market and you're like, Aaron Rodgers looked pretty dang washed and basically got Joe Douglas fired because Joe Douglas, who once drafted both the offensive and the defensive rookie of the year in the same draft class, he knows what he's doing, but he believed too much in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron's washed and also wants his hands in everything. I think that would be a really bad move. Kirk Cousins lost his job during a stretch when he threw 7 interceptions to 2 touchdowns. He just fell off a cliff. So you look at these options, and really the 2 guys the Steelers currently have are going to be 2 of the more coveted free agent quarterbacks. And I like the idea of Justin in the sense that I don't know that he's going to develop into a franchise quarterback ever. But you look at his age, he's 10 years younger than Russell Wilson. To me, their careers are going the opposite directions. Russ, I think, showed some flashes during the initial 6 games that he started, but I think he also started to tell you what he is at this stage of his career over the final 5 games. And my concern would be you bring him back, he's not getting any better, and at some point he is going to really fall off a cliff. On the flip side, I think Arthur Smith and others are really intrigued about, can we be the team that unlocks Justin Fields, and what can he become? And I think that he also fits from a stylistic standpoint. We just got through that segment talking about how they want to run the football. When you are a mobile quarterback, not only are you creating designed runs, not only are you creating scrambling the football, but the mere threat of you pulling the football in a read option or other situations like that opens up running lanes for your running back. And so, I just feel like with the style of offense that they want to run, they can lean into the running game even more and do so with a younger, more mobile, more athletic guy like Justin Fields.
I feel you. And the thing is that, like you said, like they can still have that run style with Fields, but because that's what they wanted to have with Wilson, but now he gives you other options to add to it. And I think the other big thing here for me, Mike, is that, we've been talking about this offensive line. You're hoping it develops, but you can't, like you see after this year, you can't put all your eggs in that basket just yet. You got to give them, another year to kind of figure things out. Even next year, like if they take the step forward and eventually become that line, it's not going to happen in week 1 or week 4. It might not even happen until like week 13 or 14, if it happens at all. And if you put Russell Wilson behind a line that's figuring it out for 13, 14 weeks, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for another 5-game losing streak like you ended the season with. But if you put Justin Fields in, he can mitigate that a little bit more, like he did when he was in there. And I think that's the thing is, if you go back and you look at the games they were able to win with Russell Wilson, you look at how they played. You look at how they played the Commanders, how they played the Giants, the Jets, the Ravens the first time, the Bengals and the Browns the second time. All those games, the offensive line not only held up, they moved people. They created space, and they gave Russell Wilson time to say, hey, you can figure it out in the pocket. Just trust what we're giving you here. But in the games, they lost the line of scrimmage against the Eagles both times at Baltimore, definitely against the Chiefs, and they didn't win it enough against the Bengals. And so I look at those things, down the stretch there. That's kind of what happened. Whereas Justin Fields, when he was in this season, there were several times, and we're going to break down specific games in a little bit here with our end of season grades, but he was able to make it not matter as much whenever there was a blown blocking assignment, and he was able to call things that kind of said, hey, let's be the aggressors. So that to me is why I think most people are and should be leaning to Justin Fields for that. And I've kind of been there since about like week 17 or 18. I was like, I just don't know what else Russell has to give here, because like we pointed out, when the Ravens figured out he has 3-pointers and layups and nothing in between, they were able to box the Steelers in. And unless the Steelers could bulldoze you over with the run game, you had nothing to worry about. And that's why they were kept from scoring anything more than 17 points in the last 5 games of the season.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Chris. And there's some metrics out there in terms of who was responsible for sacks. And there was a big percentage of that was on Russ, because he is hunting those deep shots. And in doing so, he's hanging onto the football longer. And earlier in his career, he did a lot of creating outside of structure. He'd buy himself some time. And then he was really good at knowing when to take off and, pick up 4 yards with his legs and slide using his baseball background. But that part of his game is not there anymore at 36 years old. And instead, a lot of those were either sacks or throwaways. I mean, there were so many throwaways. And so I think that he averaged 3.5 sacks over the final 5 games during that losing streak and into the playoffs. I mean, that's just going to keep you behind the chains. That's not going to get it done. And so, I just would be concerned that you bring back this guy that's already aging. It seems like the league is figuring out that, like, if we take away George Pickens, their offense is going to struggle to move the football. I just don't really like that formula. Not to mention the fact that I've been in the camp that they should trade George Pickens. So if you're going to take away George Pickens, it doesn't make sense to me to bring back the guy that his best weapon is throwing a deep ball.
I'm right with you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to reveal my final grades on the season, where the stars and skulls added up. I also want to get Mike's reaction to the Myles Garrett news that popped up on Monday. That's going to be a wild one. Keep it here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo. We'll be right back. But first, what remind you, this show is brought to you by Game Time. Looking for tickets for your next big event? Maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week. Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. The Seat View feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It's so reassuring, and the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference of those prices. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellations options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo of The Athletic. Mike, we're going to get into my grades in a sec, but we got to talk about this whole Myles Garrett thing, man. Now, if you had your head in the sand and you don't know what I'm talking about, Myles Garrett put out a public statement that he has requested the Browns to trade him. Now, the Browns have already come out and through their sources to the writers that cover nationally, they've said, well, we're not going to. Yeah. But Mike, that's a tough situation. Myles Garrett basically alluded to it towards the end of the season that, like, he wants to be somewhere that's competitive. You kind of saw in the Hard Knocks episodes, his demeanor was kind of, he was being there. He was getting through the season. But, I mean, that's one of the best players in the NFL. And he's like, I'm tired of losing. They won, 4 games this season? What are your thoughts on this? Will this even actually go through in your mind?
Well, first of all, I think it's a little bit wild that he put out a public statement to
Yeah.
request a trade, man. Like that was a little extra. And maybe he was trying to get ahead of it. And in the statement, he was talking about like, oh, I love the fans, blah, 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 all this baloney. But like, I don't know, man. Like putting out a statement is crazy to me. And I don't know. I was pretty turned off by his personality on Hard Knocks. He seemed very selfish and very much like he would talk to guys and be like, it's about personal achievements and stuff like
Right.
this. And even when he was asked about like at the end of the season about whether he would request a trade, he's like, man, I have to worry about what's best for me and stuff. And it is what it is. Like I guess I could see myself, what he's played 9 years for them, 8, 9 years. And, they're kind of toiling in obscurity. It seems like the franchise is headed downhill. I could see myself getting frustrated, but I don't know if I would go about it in this particular manner. As far as will the trade go through, I think that all this stuff that came out with, sourced reports of people saying the Browns aren't going to trade him. To me, that's just trying to recoup some leverage, because the worst thing you can do is have all 31 other teams know we've got this player who does not want to be here. Okay. And so we're going to have to give him up for basically nothing. Like that diminishes his value significantly when he's out there, versus if the Steelers came out and like, they're not going to, but if they were shopping TJ Watt and we're like, we need you to completely blow us away with an offer. Those are two very different negotiations, when a guy's demanding a trade very publicly versus when you could shop somebody and see what they might be worth.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are speculating this might, because of that, they might only get back like a first, a second, and a player. Whereas, like you think with Myles Garrett, you should get 3 firsts with how good he is.
Yeah, a lot of people. That's what Diana Rossini, who covers national reporter for us at The Athletic, she had a tweet about that, where some people she had talked with are like, yeah, there's no way they're getting 3 first-round picks. They were saying what you're saying, Chris. They think it's going to be maybe a first and a second and a player, maybe all that.
Yeah, I found it very, very interesting how things were playing out at the end of the season. You saw Myles Garrett's comments, and I shared your play. I also thought there were some weird moments. I don't know what you like, the episode where they played the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and like they really played up this idea that he was sick, though. Like, when he talked afterwards, he seemed fine, and when he was celebrating his 1 sack in garbage time, he seemed totally active and fine. And like, I don't know, like, they really played that up a lot on TV. And then like they made no mention of Cam Hayward or Patrick Queen or any of the Steelers who got flus at one point. I was kind of like, that's kind of weird. I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of played up. But to me, I'm with you. I'm not. I feel like the Myles Garrett, and listen, I've never played for an organization like the Browns. I've never played professional football at all. But like that might be a tough spot where you're like, you know what? This is never going to fix itself. And I would like to be at like a Super Bowl competition level, and this just isn't going to be it. So maybe that's just him forcing his way out of there, but that's a tough one for Cleveland, man, because he's been the face of that organization since they drafted him. He's been the hope. It's going to take away the TJ Watt, Myles Garrett debate away from Cleveland fans. They're going to be like, well, wait, he doesn't like us anymore. That's going to be, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm right with you.
But if you're Broderick Jones, who's expected to, and you're Troy Fautanu,
you're like, thank you, Jesus. Like you're doing praise
you're like,
dancing.
please get this man out of the AFC North ASAP.
So yeah, I'm right with you.
Drive him to another city happily.
It's all the way to Seattle. No, but I'm right with you on this. That move of saying like, oh, he's not up for that is just pure negotiate, just trying to drive up the price. And look, he's Myles Garrett. He's a heck of a playmaker. He's gonna draw a return. But if they do end up trading him, I think they will. It's blow up time in Cleveland, and that's going to be rough for Kevin Stefanski after a 4-win season and losing the best player that the Browns have had in who knows how long. So I mean,
they're obviously hamstrung by the Deshaun Watson contract, and so that alone might unfortunately force them into a period of rebuilding, which I'm sure is going to break a lot of Steelers fans' hearts that are listening to this podcast.
Absolutely. Let's get back to talking about the Steelers. It's time for our end of the year stars and skulls grades. We did defensive line yesterday. We're doing quarterbacks today since we spent a lot of time on talking about the quarterback position. As always, all season long, every single game, you got anywhere from 1 to 3 stars or 1 to 3 skulls based on how good or bad you played. You could also get a neutral grade if you didn't, if you were just kind of in the middle and didn't impact the game much. Let's go through the quarterbacks here. I want to start start with the guy who did play a couple snaps this year, and that was Kyle Allen. He made it. He made a good pass, man. I gave him a star for that one pass, only one star. No, you still just get a C for that. But kudos to Kyle Allen. When he was called upon this season, he made a tough throw. I think it was a third down conversion. It was like a 17 or 18-yard pass or something like that. He gets points in my book for getting that. But, when you only get one star, it's like, what can I really grade you for other than that?
Now, that was one good throw. And I guess my question with Kyle Allen is, like, how do the Steelers view him? Do they think he's a realistic QB2 option? I thought he looked pretty decent in camp, but I also think you could probably do better than that, or at least give yourself like a younger option with more upside. So we'll have to see where that goes.
So let's go to the guy who saw the next most amount of time starting getting it at quarterback, and that was Justin Fields. And on the season, I actually only ever gave Justin Fields a single skull in the year. He had 7 stars to 1 skull. That's a B- by our metrics, the way we kind of balance things at the end of the year. Mike, I felt like Justin Fields, he did what was asked of him for the most part. There were times that he missed things. There were certainly plays that he left out there on the field. But rarely did he give the killer mistake. And I look at that and I think that, like, man, like, if he could use that as a foundation and expand upon that and find more ways to make plays while limiting mistakes, he could be the quarterback the Steelers are looking for right now and trying to piece things together.
Yeah, I think it was like after 3 or 4 games, Mike Tomlin was asked to evaluate Justin Fields, and he said he's doing what we're asking of him. And I thought that was a good way to explain it, because the Steelers often have been a very risk-averse offense, and they've prioritized protecting the football above all else. And Justin Fields, who had a reputation for taking sacks, turning the football over, throwing interceptions, I mean, he really protected the football well. He had 1 interception, I think, against 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a pretty good rate right there for a quarterback. And, there were a couple other turnover-worthy type plays, that he had a little bit of luck there in some situations, but still, I think of all the ways that he developed this season, I mentioned it before, with his best passer rating of his career, best completion percentage, best EPA per attempt. The fact that he improved protecting the football is, I think, maybe one of the most encouraging things about his game.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. You're protecting the football, making plays. I think the thing they're going to ask him of next year, if he does return, is, hey, we're going to expect you to have more command of an offense. But I also think part of it is that was an offense designed from the very start for Russell Wilson. When Arthur Smith was hired, it was like, hey, that's the guy. It wasn't until Russell Wilson got hurt in training camp that Justin Fields even got the chance to start. And so now this offense will be designed around him. If he's the guy. We are not saying that he already is. We got to wait to see how the Steelers handle that with free agency and who they sign to keep. But that being said, that's why I gave Justin Fields a B-. He didn't do he wasn't amazing, but he was really solid in a lot of ways. And I think that if he's able to build off of that, he'll put the Steelers in a really good spot again. 5 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns. Did have some fumbles and some snap issues here and there, and threw 1 interception. But all in all, I give that a B-. Now,
well, even okay, just sorry for 1 second.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Even one of the snap issues, I think the most famous one was the game against the Colts. He came out and took the blame for that. But really, it was kind of on the operation. It was on Frazier, and it was on I think it was Samala who was tapping him in that instance. He was expecting the snap earlier. He kicked his leg up, and then Frazier was supposed to snap the football. Frazier kind of waited. They tapped him again. Then he snaps it. So, that's something that I think can be cleaned up pretty easily. So I don't really hold that against him.
I think so too. Again, it was a rookie center with his first year in the NFL. Yeah. It was one of his first road games. Right. I think that's certainly part of it. But again, I think this is another point for Fields. When moments like that happen, where it could have been on Zach Frazier, it could have been on someone else, he always took it. Even when he was benched, he was like, "I wasn't good enough."
Which is what you've got to do. Like. It's not that important for the general Joe Yinzer to know what went wrong exactly, right. But like, it's important for the quarterback. That's part of your responsibility, is to stand up and realize, I'm going to shoulder some blame, even when it's not all my fault. It's one of those my bad, not my fault kind of situations, is kind of the way I would describe that.
Exactly. Let's move along to Russell Wilson's grades. I promise you, I did not do this on purpose. This literally is just how it came out at the end of the season.
It's going to be 13.9, isn't it?
It's a 13.9 grade, baby. 13 stars, 9 skulls.
You did this on purpose, Chris, you liar.
I did not. I looked at it. Listen, I can even count them out for you. I had 2 stars against the Jets, 2 stars against the Giants.
I believe you.
But we tallied it up, and then it just the thing was that through all the early games, I did not have Russell Wilson with a skull until the Ravens game, because I even gave him a star for the Eagles game. I didn't put the Eagles loss on him. The Steelers got bullied in the trenches in a lot of ways in that game, but the second Ravens game, terrible. The pick 6, the fumble at the red zone, the Chiefs game minus. I gave him 3 skulls for that, 2 skulls against the Bengals in the regular season finale, and then I gave him only one skull against the Ravens in the playoffs because he did make some impressive throws, but ultimately didn't do enough to make sure the Steelers were in that game in the first place. But I think this is the thing here, is that Russell Wilson, and listen, I agree if your stance is like, hey, Russ played better when the offensive line and the run game was there. I agree entirely. When Najee Harris and the run game was going, and even the threat of the run game was there. Like, you look back at some of the Najee Harris, there was that streak of 3 games against the Raiders, the Jets, and the Giants where he had over 100 yards rushing, and then that kind of lingered for a few weeks. Against it went into the bye week. They played the Commanders. He got 53. Then 63 against the Ravens, then 41, 75 against the Bengals. But it was right around that time when the Steelers played the Eagles, and he got 14 yards. And I think that's when the Ravens were like, they're not running the ball that well. Take that away. Force Russ to hit the deep ball and just have to check it down. We can stymie the Steelers. And then the blueprint was out there. And again, that's why I think Justin Fields, if he can help you avoid being in that kind of corner that the people corner the Steelers into, that's why he can be the guy. And listen, it might not be fair to Russ that's the position he was put in and that's just his weakness, but it is what it is. That's where, when they say football is a business, that's what it came down to.
Yeah, I like the way you graded him with the 13 stars and the 9 skulls too, because I think there were a lot of high points for Russ. And as a passer, I thought that he was a clear upgrade over what Justin Fields was giving you last year.
Right.
And I think that his moon ball married very well with George Pickens' skill set. I think he unlocked a side of Calvin Austin that we hadn't seen. It was like almost as soon as they turned the page to Russ, Calvin's game took off. But he just fell a little bit short. Like, I would have loved for Mike Williams to be another great deep threat. I would have liked Russ to protect the football better in big moments. And that it's interesting that you pinpointed that Ravens game, because that was where the tide turned. And in that game afterwards, again, like we were talking about with Justin, Russ really shouldered the blame for that game and said, I put that on me. It was not all on him. The Steelers didn't stop the run and so forth. There's a million things we can break down. I do give him credit for standing up there and saying, taking responsibility for it. But he did have a huge role in the loss, turning the football over twice, including once by the goal line, including the pick 6. I mean, you can look at that as almost a 14-point swing right there.
Yep.
You don't make those 2 plays, it could be 14 points the other direction. So we'll have to see what it ends up meaning for the Steelers long term. The way I look at it, my best educated guess is I do think that the Steelers are more interested in signing Justin Fields, but you also can't come right out and say we want Justin, and then what as Art Rooney said to reporters, like, Justin also has a decision to make, and Russ has a decision to make. What is Fields going to want? Because he's coming off his rookie contract. He hasn't made the money like Russell Wilson has yet. So, if another team comes in and gives him more term, gives him like a 3-year deal, or gives him a little bit more money, maybe this decision is not in Steelers' hands, and maybe it's ultimately in one of these 2 quarterbacks' hands.
And I think that's the thing here, is that money is a big part of this too, because the Steelers still need to add a lot to this roster, in my opinion. They need to figure out corner. They need to figure out D-line. receiver, and that can be through the draft or through free agency or through trade. But there's a lot of moves the Steelers still need to make, and I think part of it's going to be like, if they want Justin Fields, can they get him for the price that they think they can build around him the right way? And if they can't, can they get Russ the price that they want to build him around the right way? Big questions still out there. We'll keep you up to date with how things are going here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, as will Mike DeFabo. Mike, thank you for joining us here. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Mike DeFabo, and always read my stuff in The Athletic. And Chris, last night on the Final Word, it was pretty funny because we were talking about mock drafts, and then Chris is like, "Read mine in the Post-Gazette."
Yes, because you made a great point. You were like, "Listen, mock drafts this early. We're just trying to give you a sense of what the draft could look like. Do not take it as the gospel.
Don't freak out, yeah.
But do read my mock drafts because we want those clicks, buddy." That was definitely the sentiment.
And we were going back and forth. I was like, "No, in The Athletic." It was like it was like an Anchorman where they're like, "You stay classy, and thanks for stopping by, but stay classy.
But stay classy.
And thanks for stopping by."
He's Mike DeFabo.
So as always, read the mock draft in The Athletic.
There you go. You stay classy. But in all seriousness, thank you, Mike, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias at Carter Critiques, always the same handle. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down the Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those Monday through Friday episodes, as well as read me in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. Back tomorrow with more on your Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.